Welcome to the Growth Minded Accountant podcast, where our experts will share best practices on running your firm in the digital age. This podcast is brought to you by CountingWorks PRO. Let's get started.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 2 of the Growth Minded Accountant. We had a fun one last time, Lee, so we kind of talked and we're like, well, let's just keep this going, I guess.
Well, we think it might be worth our clients' times to hear what we have to say, because I think it's very important. It's kind of following the current trend. So let's see where this conversation goes.
It's not just following the current trend, right? We've been talking about something, and it's a huge shift that I think a lot of firm owners, small firms, big firms even, are really missing out on, right? And it's this shift that we have started to talk about. It's from, hey, most firms have an analog mindset, right? They provide analog services, they do analog touch points, their growth model is analog, and it's about this shift that's occurring from, hey, analog services and touch points to digital services and touch points. And I wanted to get your opinion on this because I think the shift is a lot bigger than firms are making it out to be, which is they're taking their traditional analog growth model and analog touch points, and they're kind of just like sprinkling in some digital touch points on top of it. But why don't you maybe give me what you really think is going on, and we can try to like dive deeper into this digital native kind of mindset.
Yeah, and I think the pandemic obviously accelerated everything, but through this, everyone in the beginning was kind of risk averse on doing everything online, and now they want to do everything online. It's just kind of the expected way. They've gotten used to it. They trust it now. They're not as afraid of it. So when they work with, different brands that have this incredible user experience, you're buying, Teslas and Rivians online, you're buying cars online now, but you can't work with your accountant. That is kind of a roadblock that, maybe with an existing client who is used to the analog way of doing things and doesn't mind a voicemail box that's full, or you not returning their email for 3 or 4 days, that might work. But the reality is, as you've said before, in the digital native world, there's a whole new set of consumers, business owners who expect everything to be digital. And if you are not jumping on this bandwagon, if you call it a trend or a bandwagon, the reality is this is what they expect. You're going to lose business.
Yeah, I go as far as to say, so I think a lot of people, well, two things, have chalked this up to like generational differences. And I think it's bigger than that, transparently. It's so much bigger where it's what you said, which is there's a client shift that's happening. And it's really hard for people that I think depending on the age bracket, right? But like 35 and younger, that generation is born in technology. They were born their entire life in technology. It's all they know, and it's how they do business. And this is the next wave of clients that are now coming up to the accounting firms looking for an accounting space. And they're not looking for analog touch points and analog services. They're looking for everything to be digital. Firms we talked about, right? Like Pilot, right? Like Pilot's one of the first truly, I think, digital native accounting space that we're going to see more and more of. And that's why they're hot in like the SaaS, the tech startups, the next wave of clients, I think. And at least that's the trends I see happening with this shift from analog to digital is all of your clients coming are going to be digital only almost.
Yeah. And even you don't need to be 35 and younger. I mean, I'll give an example just in my own business, renewing or shopping out for some insurance products, talking to the broker, and the broker then, sends me this long 10-page agreement, and I have to go through and print it out, check it off. There's no e-sign. So finally I'm like, well, can I put it into, we use HelloSign. I'm like, I'll just put it into HelloSign and make it an e-sign document myself. I mean, that's literally what I did. And I could not believe that they, have not at least just gotten an e-signature standpoint. But, the think of the analog things that you're doing, and you mentioned Pilot. The reality is every single independent tax and accounting firm can be a mini version of Pilot. And the better part of it is you're not some huge black hole accounting firm that the consumer doesn't know who they're working with. They're still going to be able to get that same digital experience through digital tools that a Pilot is presenting. But they're now working with, I know who the lead CPA is. I know their experience. I know them personally. I know they care about me. It's not some, a new accountant every 3 months kind of relationship. And I think that's a big differentiator, and which is going to be key for accountants as they move forward.
Yeah, I totally kind of agree with that sentiment. I think I read something too. I think it was somewhat interesting. It was on LinkedIn, actually. It was just like, how much longer until tax prep is free for everybody, right? Like, that type of stuff's coming very soon. I think it's going to reach that point.
Yeah, well, people say that, but then at the same time, the reporting stuff will be like that and commoditized. But the reality, as long as there's politics, there will not be this utopia world that you're reading on LinkedIn. It just doesn't exist. So if you've now somehow solved all world problems and the politics of the U.S. and a way that will now have this no rules and everything's easy. There's no loopholes. There's no, so, I laugh because Lee Reams Sr. has been in the business forever. This is things they've been hearing for years and years and years. Yeah. The reality is, I will say the shift from tax prep to tax planning is real, and understanding the value of tax planning from the consumer's standpoint and being able to, significantly change a financial outcome by working ahead of time before, tax prep is historical anyways. Tax prep is not what tax planning is all about. Tax planning is understanding, okay, I'm setting up a business. How do I set up that entity? What type of tax deferred ways can I save? What are the tax treatments on that entity when I go to sell it? Are there certain ways that I put things together? That is where the shift is in accounting firms. Tax prep firms are going. So they're already seeing that shift. I'm not worried necessarily about the tax prep and it all being free, but yes, will it at some point be even automated? And you're seeing it in TurboTax actually, where they're pulling in data from all these different sources, and so they're already collecting them and have these hooks in to the data. So at some point, a lot of that stuff's going to be streamlined. But as a tax and accounting pro, I'm not too concerned about that right now.
Yeah. That makes sense. And it's funny too. I think like the other point that we wanted to talk about really quick on this topic is a lot of firms right now, when we think about the shift, and it's really, I think, client driven, but a lot of firms are focusing on their back office for their digital transformation, right? Like, oh, we're going to go get like these task management solutions and really get our back office digital and stuff like that. I know you had some thoughts kind of on those trends for that type of transformation.
Yeah, so there's two things. And we hit up our own client base with a survey in the last 7 months, 8 months. And our clients, I consider, are a little more progressive when it comes to IT stuff, and they're more, leading the way on digital sides. Even 58% of them are still doing a lot of their tasks manually, so the analog way. So as much as we see a trend, where people are starting to digitize a lot of these things, a lot of people are just focused on that right now. But there's all kinds of tools out there. There's Carbon, Canopy. You can use Asana, Trello. There's all kinds of different workflow tools that basically just make it easier to organize your workflows in a digital format and work in teams where, if you're not all in the same office, if you're not doing your paper-based workflows and in baskets and missing information, all it is just a digital version of it. It's really easy. So I think a lot of people are starting to see the value there. It still kills me sometimes on forums where people bark about, complain about how much this costs. And it's like, what's $99 a month or $45 a month or $150 a month when you're talking about hours and hours of each week saved by using digital workflows? It doesn't make sense. But yeah, that's the big trend I'm seeing. I'm still a little bit surprised of the 58% that are still using I would call paper-based workflows. But I'm not as concerned, I think, in this discussion is trying to get people to change the way they do things. If they do tax returns a certain way, if they do the books or whatever they're doing, no matter what, they're going to be digitized, because clients are going to say, here's all my digital, assets. I'm not sending you paper anymore. I'm not walking in with a box full of receipts and saying, here you go. I'm now using a tool that collects all that, and I have a digital record of it, and I'm just sharing it with you. So I think you're seeing the digitization of the back office just organically and naturally. I think some of the things we wanted to get into is the trends where they're not seeing the front end side. So how do I digitize that front end of the office? And I think that's the real opportunity for professionals to differentiate themselves.
Yeah, that's so. I'm going to ask then, as you brought that up. You're a firm, and you mentioned like, hey, like 50% plus are still doing the paper route, and let's say you're listening to this, and you kind of agree, right? You're like, okay, I can see how clients are born in technology. I can see how I can no longer just do analog with digital touch points. But let's say you're going to try to make a shift. Actually, I'm curious your thoughts. If there's still a large amount doing paper, do you start with your front office or do you start with like the back office, or where does that transformation kind of like if what really matters there to start?
Well, it depends on how you look at it, right? So, are you worried about your time or your client's time and their preferences? The easy win to me is starting with the front digital office, because if I don't want to change my ways, if this is the way I'm comfortable, this is the way I do my best work in my world, my perception, then you can kind of stay in your back office, the same way as last year. From the front office standpoint, the world has completely changed. The way referrals are taking place, the way people decide to who they work with. They're doing all this research online. So if your firm, for example, doesn't have a very solid organic search result ranking with a bunch of 5-star reviews and a website that speaks to their pain points, you're going to have a hard time attracting as many clients. You're still going to get reviews, but they're happening on social now. Someone's asking their friends on Facebook or on LinkedIn, who do you use? Here's who I use. If they then go Google your name and it's just this horrible looking site that's built in the 70s, you're not going to.
There wasn't even sites back then, Lee. Come on.
Hey, some of the sites I look at now, I think they were built in the 70s. I think when Gore created the internet, I think is the same time some of these websites were built. So whatever timing that is, I think that's about right.
I do actually agree though, right? Like, let's say you're on this, like, okay, we have to get more digital. The front office is so much more important right now. Yeah, you can get the time efficiency and stuff in the back office, but we're talking about your client experience. We're talking about how clients' buying behaviors have changed rapidly now. You mentioned that they go into a Facebook group, they ask that group, hey, who's using this to do X? And all of a sudden they don't get 2 or 3 referrals calling their friend anymore, their peer. They're getting 30 now in a group. They're doing quick Google searches. They're doing research. And that's where I think like one of those pillars, right, is up front. It's that prospect experience before they're even a client. And it's about thinking how prospects now are buying client services, how they're finding accounting services, how they're doing the research. And all that is now just digitally native. It's not calling or talking to your neighbors much anymore, getting 1 or 2 recommendations, calling them up, and you're sold because your like-minded peer told you that. Like that whole thing has shifted now.
Yeah, and for sure. And I think some of the elements that people need to realize is you need to create content or have an established digital presence in different versions of the funnel. And what we mean by that is somebody an intent buyer? So meaning, are they ready to buy? They decided they got a referral. That person's different than someone who has, they're hitting an issue in managing their own cash flow, and they're realizing, finally, I don't have enough time to deal with this. I don't have a time to set up budgeting. They might start researching what tools are out there to help me budget. So there might be some software recommendations, an article that you have written about, these are some budgeting tools. But the reality is, in addition to that, you need to have experience. You need to know what KPIs are important. You need to know how to put this technology, install it, actually set it up correctly so that, it's garbage in, garbage out. So there's a lot of different ways that you can create content. We've talked about this in other podcasts, cornerstone content that you can use to educate and build basically your reputation so that digitally, this is all happening digitally, people on their mobile devices, on their desktop, whatever, they're going to then find your brand. They're going to be introduced to your brand. So the question is then, what does that story look like? Does it walk them through an experience that says, wait a second, this person really knows about me. They specialize in me, hopefully. And in reality, you're pre-selling. So all these digital assets are pre-selling. By the time they call you, you're literally, hopefully in a 15-minute discovery call, deciding, is this client right for me? They're deciding, is this pro right for me? And then from there, it's like, now, what other digital experiences can we throw on that? How do we make it easier for them to receive their, let's call it an estimate, an engagement? What does the engagement look like? Is it a package program where I click a button, I can buy it online? Is it something that I pick from a menu and it dynamically creates an estimate? Is this something that's customized? Maybe it's like Pilot where you have 3 or 4 programs. The client says, hey, this is what I'm interested in. I want your platinum program. Easily, get that digitally into the client's hands. They can approve it. They can pay it. They can sign off in their engagement letter digitally. That is part of like where the world is going with the digital front office and things that professionals need to start thinking about.
Yeah, it's that that digital experience starts long before they find you, and then it has to continue into the engagement, which I agree with. I'm thinking about like my bookkeeper now, right? And I'm like, they're still emailing me, and I'm like, I hate emails actually. Like I don't read emails. I can't keep track of emails. Like I want like very instant communication transparently with my advisor that I feel like I pay good money for, right? But that's kind of the next level of expectations. Like, and if you're not providing that, and I'll let you go deeper into the client experience too. But then the other thing that's kind of happening now that people are missing is that referral thing we talked about is like a never ending battle now. Like, so if you're not engaging digitally, keeping in front of your clients, doing that client experience, they might be in another group or doing research, or you said like budgeting, right? Like, how do I forecast, right? And they're not even talking to you about that because the communication gap. And that's, so you need like that really quick communication stream to kind of combat some of that almost.
So there's a bunch of ways to go with what you said. I'll start with the email. I mean, you're talking about business issues or financial issues via email, security, number one. So having a secure way to communicate with your clients as a CPA and account EA is job number one. And then from there, so how do you make it easy? We at CountingWorks, obviously, we have our client hub. That is something that is a secure way to chat, share documents, to add to-dos to each other's queue. Makes it super easy. You get notified when a new communication comes in. That is the future. That's the way you should be doing things. The traditional email lost in an email box, who knows where it is. If you can consolidate this entire look of the client, keep it secure, and both they can access and you can access, that's, I think, obvious. I mean, that kind of solution is there, but it amazes me how many accountants are still, sharing things via unsecure email.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't say that. I think I literally just emailed my bank statements to my accountant. So,
well, I'll tell you what, the SBA, when they were doing the EIDL loans, were asking for, they were emailing, people were emailing bank statements.
Yeah, I believe that. And I think that client experience, right, I think that kind of gets like to the back end versus front end, right, where some firms, I think like they have something that pulls in all the emails into like a back office portal, right? But like your client's the one who's losing track of everything. I can't keep up with it. All of a sudden, my accountants message me, I need this. I don't got time to even look for this right now. And then I forget about the email, and then 4 days go past and they ping me again. And that's kind of where like that experience comes in with that, like that client front office, client hub, one place to communicate on everything. Because I at least I've lived that numerous times where I get an email and I cannot keep up with emails unless I have a free minute when that email comes in to tackle it. I've already forgotten about it.
Yeah, I have 3 main email boxes now, and I would say an hour and a half a day spent cleaning thousands of emails. Well, the beauty of a solution that works, and a client-facing solution, is okay. Now I can chat. My client can chat back to me. We can share documents. But the whole to-do, here are some milestones. These are your to-dos, Jay. This is what I need from you. Or the client coming back, hey, CPA, I need a budget for this division. We're looking at expanding. What does it look like if we grow by 10%, 25%, 30%? Something that then reminds you of that due date of that to do, and is easily trackable in one system. That organizes you much better than trying to do all that via paper-based or via email, which is even more disorganized, so to speak.
Yeah, I love that. It literally is, email such a black hole. We got to get out of that and really digitize, I think, the client experience across the board. And I think this is what the next wave of your clients are going to expect. Like,
well, just think even, I was going to say, just think even of logging into your dashboard and being able to sort. These are all my new conversations. These are all my today to-dos. These are the tasks I have to finish today, without getting lost in them, and being able to just say, okay, here's my day, and then just knock them out. Check. and moving on. So that's the beauty of having a front end digital experience that then feeds your efficiency on the back end.
Love it. Is there anything else you want to bring up on this digital native client experience?
Yeah, so where I see things going. So we talked about establishing your footprint in the front end. So how do I attract clients? Then how do I convert them with pricing and proposals online, accepting payments so you get paid faster, right? From there, it's then, okay, I have a digital sign off of my engagement letter, and I've now digitized another, pain point for you and the client. Online scheduling. This is the biggest no-brainer. Client can go in, schedule time with you. I can organize, manage. I've saved some staff times. There's due date reminders that go with that. More, time saved. But then getting into the intake process. So now, how do I intake my clients in the beginning? Do I have a way to organize them? It's almost like a pre-organizer. I can set up new clients, go through this experience. I have old clients that go through this experience, give them a different user experience, but it's all digitized where they now know they're going to receive this communication, know what I need to do. And then instead of you chasing things, I'm missing this. I mean, we used to have a missing information form, and it would have a physical piece of paper with check marks with all the things that are missing. And you would either mail or fax it literally to the client. Now you can digitize all that. This is my missing information. This is everything that I still need from you in order to move forward. And I think those are things that really help. In addition, having to-dos and management tools, if your clients are getting, let's say, notices from the FTB or the IRS, and you have to make responses during a certain period of time, you load these into your system, and they digitally will remind you, hey, you need to respond by X time. So because I think those are kind of things that are easily missed in an analog world where you're writing things down in paper and you miss a due date or something like that really destroys your client. So those are some really good examples of how I think the digital front office has changed and will change for good. And then go all the way into e-signatures of 8879s, KBA, know your client. If they sign something electronically, how are you verifying that they are who they say they are? Those are the kind of things you need to worry about in compliance. So those are all what I'll call the digital front office type of solutions.
Yeah, and you said one thing I kind of want to just like dial in a little bit, because I think there's like this kind of confusion on sometimes where people go like well, we're talking about. Right. So the client experience, right? Oh, well, I'm going to send an email which goes to a Word doc for client intake. And it's like, that's not digital. Like, that's not what we're talking about. That's analog with some digital touch points on top of it. And that's like the big shift where firms are doing that. And that's not enough anymore. That's not truly digitizing your client experience. That is not what the new wave of clients want. They see that as an analog way now. That is not even a digital way to them.
Yeah, and so I keep going back to time. It's and security, both for you and the pro, but I mean you and the client. So using these misfit toys, like fitting deals, like some of the things I'm going to change a little bit. We do. This is still digital, but we do use tools that aren't necessarily all in one. Like we have a new, I'm gonna I guess tease a new tool. We have what's called the Practice Bot that's coming out in a month or so. We'll see where we get. But basically, one of the things is we want our pros, when they receive inbound inquiries from their website. So there's like Ask My Professional, and let's say it's a new client or a current client, whatever it is. But we made it simple, like it's like an intercom, but real basic, without all the programming, without all of the heartache of setting it up. But the idea is that you receive notification immediately, whatever that inbound inquiry is. It goes to your mobile device, your email, so you'll get a text. If you have your mobile device, you get the text. You can literally click a link in the text and communicate with the client whatever format you want outside of our ecosystem. So a lot of what I've seen is a lot of systems, especially like LinkedIn, Facebook, they don't want you leaving their ecosystems because that's how they generate money. They generate money from advertising and the time you spend in your ecosystem. But that's not very efficient. If someone doesn't have Facebook Messenger or wants to communicate with you in Facebook Messenger, that's the tool you're using on your website. We're saying everyone has a mobile device, everyone has email, everyone has text. So at least the idea is, can we expedite and make, using digital technology, shorten the time that you respond, but make it so you can work whatever way you want in communicating with them. You can use the phone then. You can do, text them back. But it makes it, I guess, much more, I guess it's easier is what I'm trying to say, for the user to utilize the tool and communicate with you. But there's a lot of, but it isn't the old, faxing. Email still is, to me, it's a lot of times a black hole, because people get it and they just lose it, or it goes to spam. There's all kinds of things. So we love getting to the mobile device, getting to a text.
Yep. Love it. Anything else you want to talk about on this digital frontier that we missed?
I think today our topic was really the digital front office. And what I'm getting at is a lot of times accountants look at marketing and they say, I don't need marketing. But which is just crazy to me, because marketing, the user experience, the perception of your brand, you're selling your expertise, right? So what makes someone feel that you know what you're talking about is, how does your website look? What is my user experience coming in? These guys really have it together. These guys know what they're doing. Therefore, you're going to be able to charge premium pricing. And that's what it comes down to. So if you want to work with fewer clients, jump on board on the digital front office. I think that's the way of the future. And you're going to see a lot of people are just so tired. They're so busy right now, kind of pushing this direction. So that's the main theme. That's kind of what the takeaway I wanted from this session for people to just kind of think about.
I think that's the big opportunity that's out there right now. There's this huge shift, and not a lot are fully taking advantage of it yet. And that can be a huge opportunity, which is, you have to figure out how to get content, right? You're creating content, yes, for SEO, but you have to figure out how to get content that gets distributed, right? Content that gets shared now. Like, you have to think about the social channels now, because that's where everybody's getting their information from. They're getting their information in the groups, in the Slack channels, on LinkedIn, in the Facebook groups. Yes, they're doing SEO and Google too and some of that, but there is some of that shift happening as well that firms need to be aware of, which is, people are consuming content more, they're finding it differently, they're reading it differently, and you have to be creating all of that to work to fuel your next leg of growth here, I think very soon.
Yeah, and one of the unfortunate things is we had a client, I think even today, who was all fed up with social, and they said, I want to take down all my social connections. I hate social media. And I'm like, do you understand and I'm going to get into like mainstream television and the future of television as people, the way people are going to consume entertainment in the future will be in the metaverse. It will be on social, it'll be on TikTok, it will be all these things. And I mean, the shift is there, but some old school or people that are thinking the old ways don't realize that is kind of the demise of a lot of that technology will continue over time. That's why live sporting events are so important. So having that established presence in these ecosystems, what's great is it's a game changer for smaller businesses. They couldn't evangelize like they can now. They couldn't get their word out like they can now. They couldn't buy advertising on ABC. Now the reality is anybody can build a reputation online. Anyone can become an expert, an influencer, and have real sway that is an economic sway. And I think that's what when we talk about that digital first mindset, that is kind of the direction that everything is going, but that's where accountants need to start working and start using, their own, I guess, business models kind of transitioning to that.
I love it. Like, you are in charge of your growth now. You can go out and brand yourself. You can go reach your target clients that you want to go towards. So easy now. Like, it's right there, and there's such opportunity as a firm to make this switch before anybody else does and go stake the claim for the type of firm you want to be, the type of clients you want to work with, and you can own the story, the narrative, the message. Like, it's all right there. Like, social has changed that for you.
Yeah, and there's groups that exist today that you can join and start sharing your knowledge. So let's say, we've talked about position firms a lot. So those that are niching down, those that are specializing, we're a big proponents of it. But even if you're not, so let's say you did want to start establishing yourself in a new vertical. I use dentists all the time. I don't know why. It just seems like it's always top of mind. Dentist, dental this, dental that. But there's so many groups out there that you can join, whether that be Facebook, LinkedIn. You want to find something that's active, or you can just go create your own. And you can become that voice. I mean, if you're on Instagram and all the different new startups and new brands that are able to target you, you could do the same thing. So you're correct. You have to create that positioning statement. You create that brand, that story. It's all about telling your narrative, speaking to the pain points, and walking your client through that user experience where they can feel and see, hey, if I work with them, this is where I can get. And the perception, again, that you know more than others, people that are generalists, I think that is a hugely important issue when you do that.
Yep. Love it.